Welcome back to Rise and Shine. On set with me, Mr. Martin George, lawyer, legal expert, and he's here. From time to time, we want to adopt him. But he talks on a wide range of issues. Apart from being legal, he talks on a wide range of issues. So we have Mr. George here this morning to continue talking about present issues that we have to deal with in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. George, good morning and welcome.
Good morning to you.
Yeah. Did we shake hands?
Good morning
welcome
to your
Rise
viewers
and
and all the listeners to your program.
Okay. Now, this morning, I don't want to run down the topics, but I have a number of things here I want us to talk about this morning. Sure. Right? Health issues, the VAT issue, the Police Service Commission, safety issues, and so. Let's start with the safety issues. The Minister of National Security has intimated that Trinidad and Tobago is not a lawless society. By and large, it's not a lawless society. Some people tend to differ. What are your thoughts?
Well, the thing is, one wonders where he's getting his information from and what is informing it, because it would seem to be that when you look at, first of all, just what happens on the nation's roads, you were just mentioning about safety on the roads and stuff like that. You see where the norm is that once you see the amber, people speed up to go through the light, and then after it's red, you have to wait like about maybe 3-4 cars coming through afterwards. So I don't know how he could say that we are not a lawless society. We are. And you see, the point is there's no use in us denying the reality in order to make a pretty picture, because no matter how many times you try to put a plaster on the sore, it will erupt unless you keep dealing with the source of the problem. So I would respectfully beg to differ from his opinion, but as I said, I'm not sure where he's getting his information from. Maybe he has a source of information that is better than most of the members of the public would seem to know. So that probably is what informed his decision. But then I also saw that the Attorney General made a comment later, I think, in the Parliament, where he spoke about the lawlessness in society. So I don't know, it doesn't seem as if they were singing from the same hymn book, because one is saying one thing, and then you have the Attorney General, I think later in the Parliament, saying, talking about the lawlessness in society, and he's saying that he wants to stamp out lawlessness. So if it is that there's no lawlessness, then maybe the Minister of National Security ought to inform the Attorney General.
Okay, there seemed to be an attitude, a brazenness and bold-facedness in the approach, well, not the approach, in the commission of a number of illegal acts in Trinidad. Murder comes...
Primarily murders. You look at what happened just yesterday with the Chinese businessman. The person went there, he looked, he saw that it was the wife at the driver's side, then he walked away, and then he waited for the man to come out of the house, and he shot him right there. So, the wife is looking on, the workers are looking on, there were people in the restaurant, from what I understand, but clearly this man came to do a job. He was obviously there to execute this businessman, and he was determined that he's doing it. And you saw footage on the video, where, I assume they may be able to use that for some purpose for investigating, but you think also of the 2 murders in Belmont recently, where you had one person going after another one, killing that person, and then shortly afterwards, you had the killer himself being killed right there on the spot. So what does that tell you in terms of who ultimately gave the instructions? Clearly somebody was pulling the strings and decided to eliminate both of them at the same time. And this happened in broad daylight. I know that street right there. You have Providence Girls School, you have Belmont Secondary, and you have the Belmont Police Station right there too. I'm talking about, this is like about 100 meters from the Belmont police station, you know. This is where that murder occurred, that double murder occurred. So you had these kinds of scenarios occurring. So I think clearly the public must feel, first of all, that there is some sense of lawlessness. And secondly, that these persons, they really have no fear, no respect for law and order. They are not afraid of the law enforcement officers. You know, they go and they do what they have to do.
Okay. All right. The Police Service Commission, I think there were two bills that were passed in Parliament quite recently.
Well, not passed. They
were presented.
Right. You had legal notices. What has happened is that the government has employed the mechanism of a cabinet note to generate the legal notices, and then now these legal notices are being brought to the House where they can be subject to negative resolution. So the process is that they are going to be debated, and then of course at the end of the debate a vote is taken. So they've taken a different route. Now previously on this type of legislation you would have had some kind of across the aisle consultation and discussion, so that basically you would come up with something that both sides are agreed to in principle. You might have to, tweak it a bit and stuff like that, but the government has taken a different approach, and I see the opposition has voiced their concerns about the approach taken and the fact that there was no consultation, and it is, I guess, from their perspective, a valid consideration, because you're looking at an appointment for a post which is supposed to be above politics. If you understand me. So therefore, it is important that you have consensuality across the board in terms of how both sides of the House agree on this. So if there isn't that agreement, I think that it is going to be fraught with difficulty going forward. If you look at today's Newsday's headlines, you will see that our chairman, she has voiced some very strong opinions on the matter, so it gives pause to consider what is the thinking behind the approach that is being taken in relation to these two legal notices.
Okay. We want a police commissioner to, it appears, as though politics is out of his appointment. How would this cabinet note, or can this cabinet note at all affect the appointment in terms of the politics in it, seeing the relevant Police Service Commission has a job to do under the Constitution? Will it be circumventing that role of the Police Service Commission?
Well, the thing is, Eddie, the reality is that having looked at it myself, I had a look at both legal notices, and as a body, we also looked at it, and I think that as a body, we will issue a statement on the matter, later this week. But I can tell you, as a private citizen, speaking as a private citizen, I do have my concerns, because when one looks at what we had before and what is being proposed, it is a radical departure, and I'm not sure it's going to achieve the stated objectives. So if you're making a radical shift from what you have, the only purpose you'd want to do that is if it's really going to get the results. And as yet, I cannot see that this is going to give the results. So one wonders, what then is the real purpose behind it?
As all this happens, the police service, some members of the police service, let me put it that way, some members of the police service, have a tendency displaying the law unto themselves, and they keep committing criminal acts. How do you think that the present position, the present situation can be better, by even these same officers or the authorities?
The first thing I would do, you see the Professional Standards Bureau, I would enhance, increase, and empower that unit even more. I would actually make it a separate unit within the police service, in the sense of I wouldn't even have them accountable to the commissioner. In other words, that then would basically form the basis of what would be in other police service services around the world, your internal affairs unit. And I have been saying this for years. I've been saying what we need is an internal affairs unit. So therefore, the Professional Standards Bureau, currently everybody knows who are the main officers there. You need to change that. You need to have officers who nobody knows that they are working in the Professional Standards Bureau. Let them be out there working at the stations, mingling among officers. That's where they're going to get the information. They're going to know, well, this inspector is doing that, that sergeant is taking a bribe. Then they will now be able to compile a dossier and say, well, look, Sergeant A at Station B has been doing these things. That's how an internal affairs unit works. You don't know who they are. I remember when I spent some time visiting at the Toronto Police Headquarters, because I had a friend there who's a senior police officer, and we were just chatting and stuff like that. And he kept telling me, he said, listen, the thing about inside here is everybody is on their toes because nobody knows who works for internal affairs. So the internal affairs officers, they are there mingling amongst you, they're working next to you, they're on the desk next to you. You don't know that that person is internal affairs. So therefore, you basically are self-regulating your conduct because you don't know who in the service is there reporting on you. We don't have that culture. So therefore, we need, in the Professional Standards Bureau, we need to develop that and then have it now as an independent body whereby they can now, so therefore they will be sending in their officers, applying as normal, as if you're a recruit or you're a constable or you're coming in as a sergeant, whatever, you're working in a station like normal. But the point is, you are there for a specific purpose, which is to gather information, compile your facts, and then present a report so that your unit can then now prosecute the errant officers. That's the only way we are going to make changes.
Okay. Have you sent your concerns to the authorities?
In terms of that?
In terms of that?
Oh, yes. I've done so repeatedly. In fact, at our meetings with the commissioner, I have made that point on numerous occasions. And the Professional Standards Bureau, you can see there's been an increase in their activity, and they are prosecuting. In fact, I think last week there were five or six officers who they sought to have prosecuted. So they are working, but as I say, that's the best vanguard of the public's interest to ensure that rogue officers are weeded out. Because you can't do it from outside. You have to be in the system so that you will hear the talk, you will know what's going on, you will observe, you will see what this one is, somebody's coming in and bringing in a brown paper bag to him, that kind of thing. And therefore, you will now be able to, as I say, compile a report and send it and have them prosecuted.
Okay, well, not all brown paper bags are illegal.
Well, you will of course ascertain the contents. Yes.
Ascertain the contents, right. Yes. Let's move on to the VAT issue. And the VAT issue, 12.5% VAT as enunciated by Dr. Keith Rowley and Mr. Colm Imber. What effects would you expect it to have? Because when Dr. Rowley spoke about the 12.5% reduction, I can't remember him talking about the 12.5% on zero-rated items together, put the two statements together. This last statement came after, I think, the government came into being. What are your thoughts on the implementation of, overall implementation of that?
Well, the thing is, it's clear that the intention is good if it is that you are looking to raise more revenue by way of either widening the tax net or ensuring that more of your collection is done. However, when one looks at the fact that there's been a reduction to 12.5 from 15 on certain items, and then you look at the fact that you've now imposed VAT on some items which were previously zero rated, you have to ask yourself if the net effect will result in an increase. I have seen where there was a senior partner from a leading law firm, Hammersmith and Company, where she gave her views and she questioned whether it would really generate the type of revenue that the government is hoping. Of course, at the end of the day, she said she will leave it to the economists to make the final determination, but she openly questioned the effect of it in terms of you are reducing it on some big ticket items, and then you are imposing it on what may be smaller consumables, of course, larger volumes. I saw also in today's Newsday, Mr. Baliram Maharaj, former president of the Supermarkets Association, he is also questioning the effect and the feasibility of the VAT changes. So you see, the thing is, while you want to do things, of course, you again, same thing like with the changes with the legal notices for the police, you must also ensure that the effect you're trying to achieve can really be brought about by the changes. Otherwise, why tamper with it? If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Okay. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But the Minister of Finance has said that about 40% of the collectible VAT is being collected, which means that close to 60%
is uncollected. Now that's a different issue.
It's uncollected.
That's a different issue from lowering the VAT on some items and imposing VAT on some other items. What you're looking at here now would be either the merchants who are VAT registered and are not submitting their returns and remitting their VAT monies collected. So that's a different issue entirely from you across the board lowering the percentage of VAT on some big ticket items and then now saying you're imposing VAT and changing some zero rated items and making them VATable. So that's a different thing. You're talking collections on the one side and then imposition on the other.
But do you think, Mr. George, that within the same system, this confused archaic system where you're only collecting 40%, it's not that you're collecting 90% or 80% and 10%, that you're not collecting half of the revenue that you are supposed to collect. Do you think more stringent measures should be put in place, maybe more personnel should be put in place, more avenues should be open to persons who are willing to pay VAT, because it could be the headache as it were, you would get to leave your business to go and pay VAT. Some people decide not to go at all.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, it is obviously to the benefit of the country to have a more rigorous system for the monitoring and the regulation and to ensure that people are making their remittances. Yeah. It is obvious. I mean, you look at the US as an example. If it's one thing everybody in the US knows is that you do not play with Uncle Sam and his taxes. He will come after you. He doesn't matter who you are. You could be the biggest Hollywood actor. You remember Wesley Snipes had trouble with him. Leona Hemsley, you had so many, Sophia Loren, you have so many persons who have ended up in trouble because of taxes with Uncle Sam. He is relentless in pursuing you for his share. He doesn't care how much money you make. Just give him his cut. That's all he's interested in. And I think it's a good example for us to look at, because at the end of the day, it's the type of rigorous enforcement that is needed in Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that, look, whereas you may have shortfalls in other aspects of the economy, but if this is part of the government's role and mandate, then certainly perform that role and ensure that you get, I mean, you should be aiming for in the 90s. Your percentage really ought to be in the 90s. It really ought to be there. So I think there's no gainsaying the fact that it has to be improved if it's that low. And it's an indictment against the government and successive governments, I would say, if it is that it has traditionally remained at that low level.
Okay. Cost to the consumer. The 12.5% increase in VAT, Mr. Imber has said that a basket of goods can cost, I think, within $50 to $60 more, while you shop per household. some people seem to say that it would cost more.
Yeah, I saw somebody quoted, they said it might be $300.
$300, between $200 to $300. But the fact is, something that we are overlooking, and I think has been overlooked, is that the price of fuel has gone up. And once the price of fuel goes up in Trinidad and Tobago, everything else jumps by that percentage. So I'm looking here at cost of goods transportation, and so cost of goods will be passed on to the consumer to the tune of the rise, the increase in gas.
We must also bear in mind, Eddie, the fact that internationally, because of the drop in oil prices, fuel prices internationally will be down. And remember, the majority of our food items consumed in Trinidad and Tobago are imported. You know, I mean, every Tobagonian goes down to PriceMart on a weekend to shop. You know, they load up their vans, their pickups, their SUVs, they go down to PriceMart and they do their shopping. So it's understood that most of our items are imported items. So internationally, there ought to be some price saving in terms of the cost of the imports. However, the question is whether our importers and wholesalers and distributors will pass on that saving to our consumers, or whether they will keep the prices at the same level and then now add on, as you say, the extra because of our local increase in fuel prices. So it may be that you end up actually paying a higher price where you should not, because if the importers are to pass on that saving to you, I think definitely it is going to lower our food bill in the long run. But I'm not sure that we will get the benefit of that.
Well, never sure that we get the benefit anyway, but...
This is the point. This is the point, yes.
I think...
See, so the fuel thing, I just wanted, because I've heard people discuss it from a one-sided perspective, only locally. But we must also look at the corollary, which is internationally, there is a drop, and a severe drop in prices, which means, so therefore, the ships, the diesel they use, aircraft, the fuel, everything will go down. So therefore, your transportation cost, generally, even on land with your trucking, your trucks, their fuel costs will go down. So therefore, there is a big saving that you do get there. And I'm not hearing our wholesalers and our importers and our distributors mentioning that. They're keeping very quiet about that. I would love them to come out and speak about that so the public can get some benefit.
Mr. George, internationally, but locally, the Prime Minister has said that we will not feel the price of gas, the lower price of gas, in our tanks in Trinidad and Tobago, the price remains the same.
Right, no, that's locally, but what I'm saying is, when you're talking about your food imports, we ought to be benefiting from lower prices for the food imports because of international lowering of the fuel costs.
Sure. Okay, for the next few minutes, I want us to talk about health issues. And health issues generally in Trinidad and Tobago. I see the Children's Hospital, the last government said that everything is in place to have it open. This government says that nothing is in place. The Mount Hope Hospital has just added or refurbished 2 wards, I think 23 and 24, to expand and to make the service more efficient. Right? In Tobago, we have the issues of the death of, quite recently, the death of Miss Rose Gordon. I think about 2 years ago or months ago, years and months ago, there was another death. There was another death.
October,
right,
2014.
How do you view these? I know you are the attorney for some of the points, so you may not want to say certain things, but generally, how do you view these?
No, the thing is, we can speak in general terms as to the management of the health sector in Tobago, and that's the biggest problem and challenge